Welcome back, everyone. Here, and this is just an update to let you know what's going on with me and my machine. If you've been reading some of my comments, you would have saw that I've been having some problems with the machine. I've been having lockups. Okay, I don't know why I was having the lockups, but I was just having them. It all stemmed back to one day someone asked me about, would you overclock your GPU? Would you make a video on that? And I was already having problems. The computer's stock, it just has too much heat, and I'm trying to get rid of heat. So that's why I looked into undervolting, just to try to get some of that, try to get my system kind of stable. So anyway, I finally got over my fear and went on and repasted the machine. I didn't find any information on voiding my warranty by repasting, so I just went on and done it. After that, I was like, you know what? I could see if I could, overclock the GPU to see if I can get any extra FPS. That would be great. So I started stepping up the core clock and the memory clock, and I was getting some good settings, And after a while of moving the core clock and the memory clock, inching up, I finally got a crash and it just wouldn't perform anymore. But before I tested the setting, I had saved that one setting in my profile on MSI Afterburner. So fast forward, I had to make a video, okay? I set everything back to 0, core clock 0, memory clock 0, and made sure the computer was not undervolted. And I reset the computer before I started. So I started up the game to play, right? Game crashed. I tried another game, blue screen. Another game, blue screened again. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So the first thing I thought was, maybe it's the driver. So I dropped the drivers down. I dropped down to 399.24 on the NVIDIA drivers. That didn't work because I was getting errors and everything for no reason. I lowered the settings in the game. I lowered the resolution. I tried all kinds of different games, still freezing and just pixelation all over the screen. I was like, oh my God, my discrete video card in this laptop is gone. I'm gonna have to send it in. And I really didn't want to do that. I had to get this video out. So I didn't want to do it, but I keep all of my programs on the extra drive that I installed in the extra bay on this laptop. So I didn't really care about erasing the main drive. So what I went on and made a recovery USB, and the Acer Nitro 5 does have a recovery partition, but I just wanted to make sure. So I restored the computer, erased everything. But before I did all that, I actually backed up all of my Afterburner settings and all of that just to make sure I can just drop it back in, right? So the computer restarted itself, everything was installed. So I was like, yeah, it's just gonna work. No problems, I don't see any freezing. Installed the drivers for the GPU, started the game up, bam, froze again. I didn't know what to do at that point. So I kind of just left the laptop alone and started working on my other machine that I have. So I was just messing around on there, doing some browsing, trying to find out some information. And I just happened to look over and see that the Afterburner was loaded up and it had that setting. Because I have my Afterburner, when it loads up minimized in the bottom right hand corner in the little toolbar box. Even though I put the core clock on 0 and the memory clock on 0, for some reason it kept loading, and I saved it. It kept loading that profile. So what I did, I just erased that profile. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, if you erased everything off, how is that profile still on there? Well, like I said, I had backed up all the information and I just dropped that folder back on after I reinstalled MSI Afterburner. So yeah, I was like, oh God, everything is fixed. So as it's fixed, and I've already did the repasting, I decided to go ahead and revisit overclocking the GPU. After looking around, I finally decided to use 3D Mark because it gave a little bit more information than some of the others. And this is coming from the website, and bear with me. What I used was Skydiver and Firestrike. Now, Firestrike and Skydiver will let you test the full range of DirectX 11 graphics hardware. Firestrike is equivalent to testing a system with a modern DirectX game on ultra settings. Skydiver is more like running a game on normal settings. And as a general guide, if a system scores less than 2800 in Firestrike, you should run Skydiver. If a system scores more than 12,000 in Skydiver, you should run Firestrike. Please note that Skydiver and Firestrike scores are not directly comparable, so when you get your test, don't even try to compare them because they're totally different and use different things. Now, a little bit more information. Skydiver includes the demo, 2 graphics tests, and a physics test, and a combined test. The graphics test measure GPU performance, the physics test measures CPU performance, and the combined test stresses both GPU and CPU. The demo does not affect the score at all. Graphics test 1 focuses on tessellation and uses a forward lighting method. Graphics test 2 focuses on pixel processing and uses compute shader-based deferred tiled lighting. The physics test introduces a new approach that extends the performance range for which the test is relevant. The test runs through 4 levels of work, starting with the lightest and continuing to the heaviest unless the frame rate drops below a minimum threshold. The combined test contains both graphics workloads and physics simulations to stress the CPU and GPU. And again, the test uses a compute shader-based deferred tile lighting method. So that's a little bit of background on the 2 tests I use. So let's look at the settings and the results that I got. Now, looking at the Firestrike, which is the first test, everything is stock right across the board. No mem clocks, everything is stock on there, no undervolting, no core clock adjustments or anything like that. Going on over, we see graphics test 1 with 33 FPS. Again, this is like the ultra high setting or whatever for a high-end desktop, and I'm running this on a notebook. Okay, so don't worry about that FPS. But anyway, we have 2887, and the physics test 1843 on FPS. Combined test is 11.88 FPS, and the temps 71C and 69C with a Firestrike score of 5860. Looking at the next line, you'll see that I added 125 core clock and 125, and then on down you'll see that I added more and more until I couldn't add any more. What I want to look at is this plus 265 mem clock and core clock. We have 39 FPS or 3910 on FPS for test 1, and for test 2 we have 3462 FPS. So we are consistent with gaining FPS all the way down, right? Moving on over, we got 20.84 for the physics test and the combined test of 14 FPS. Look at this temperature here, highest GPU and the highest CPU. We have 69 and 68 with a Firestrike score of 6903. So again, it's consistently increasing. And let's look at this undervolt. I undervolted, I kept the same settings, but I just undervolted. And as you can see, we lost frames on the graphics test 1, we lost frames on graphics test 2, lost graphics score, lost 2 frames on the physics test. We lost across the board. And what's weird is we increased temperature. Okay, look at that. 74C and 73C for high CPU. And where I got those temperatures from, if you look at the graph, when you have the file, and if you want those files, I can give them to you. This high spike usually happens on the end of a test. So it was the highest, so I had to use it. But for the most part, it's running pretty decently, like in the 70s and high 60s. Now let's look at Skydiver. First line is all stock, of course. Check that out. 105 FPS basically for test 1, 107 for test 2, 104 for 8 threads, 61 for 24 threads, 35 for 48 threads, and 19 for 96 threads. I don't know what those threads are. I guess it could have something to do with the processor. I'm not exactly sure. I couldn't find any information about it. I'm not a professional at this. It was just there, and I just thought I would include it just in case someone knows about those threads. Okay, but anyway, moving on over, combined scores 13,494, and the highest temp for the GPU was 73, highest CPU temp 72, and the Skydiver score is 15,405. And as we increase the mem clock and the core clock, you can see the same pattern like we should be seeing. Increase, increase, increase across the board. And finally, that last one on the Skydiver test right here, 265 with the undervolt of -0.115, we only lose 100th of an FPS for graphics test 1. That's pretty much nothing. And then graphics test 2, we're only losing 11. And then moving on over, hell, on 8 threads we gained, and then we lost on 24. And then the 48 threads we gained, 96 threads we gained, and moving combined test we still gained. We're gaining here. We're lifting weights, man. And then coming over to the highest GPU temp, we have 75, and the highest CPU we have 71. So that's not bad at all. This would be the best setting if you was to use it. I mean, look at that. This undervolt did not act like the undervolt in the Firestrike test. Of course, it's a different type of test. Maybe it's using something that, that of course we can't see. So it's in the program. We don't know what it's doing, but there it is. The last test I have is Shadow of War, and starting with stock, you can see that we got an average FPS of 61. This 265, this is no undervolt. Like I said, right here it says offset 0. We got 62.78, so we're gaining. And then here, look at here. You're probably wondering, like, hey, you got 275 core clock and a 350 mem clock. How come you didn't test that up there in Skydive and Firestrike? Well, the reason why I didn't is because even though it ran in Shadow of War, when I tried to run those benchmarks, it would maybe get through the first test and the second test, and then the test would just abort or kick out. It would say canceled by user. So I felt that wasn't a stable setting, but it did run in Shadow of War. Just looking at it, I got it highlighted as green. This is the overclock that worked good for me. And it had the most gains right here at an average of 68 FPS. This benchmark was used using the in-game generic benchmark. And this last one here is the 265, just undervolted, and we got an average of 63. Now what we don't see is the temperature. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this setting here, this 265 with an undervolt of 115 playing a game, will be the one that I would use. But if you want more FPS, then hell, go ahead for the 275 and 420. Now, and like I said before in many videos, the settings that one person uses might not work for you because all machines are different, and that's just how it is. Now, if you do try to overclock your GPU, you do it at your own risk. You can tear your machine up if you go crazy with it. So just take it easy, and you will want to step your core clock first and then step your mem clock if you decide to do that. And it's real easy. Just move them a little bit at a time, okay? Maybe 10 or 20 points. Just step it up like that. And that's pretty much all I have. I hope this helped you. If you was just thinking about overclocking or just wanted to see what results a person could get with a laptop that was overclocked, It's not very much. It's not a big increase. Just looking at the benchmarks up here with the Fire Strike and the Skydiver, it's not a lot that you get, but when you play a game, there is an increase there. We went from an average of 61 stock to an average of 68. So that's pretty good if you want that boost, but you have to make sure to keep an eye on that temp. Okay. Also, one thing before I go, if you are one of those people with a MacBook Pro 2016, I will be trying to play some VR games on it just to see if VR will work. I will also be making some more videos of VR games on the Acer Nitro 5. And that's all I have for now. I know this has been long-winded, and if I helped you in any way, just feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next game. Meanpooh out.